right, can we start finding our places? Start moving towards the seats. We're going to try to get this started here in about, a minute and a half, Nicole. You in the back. Yeah, you. Could you find a seat? Don't make me start calling you by name. Great. Yeah, you guys didn't have this later. Great. Yeah, we get the candidates up here on stage and get this thing started. Okay, going to do some quick housekeeping. Can I get everybody's attention? All right, just some quick housekeeping. It's going to be a pretty quick, fast-paced forum tonight. We're going to have a lot of fun. Oh, I'm Dale Bright. I'm the president of the Martin Luther King County Labor Council. We have Nicole Grant, our executive director. And on my left, we have Sejal and Katie. They'll be doing the emceeing tonight. It's going to move pretty fast tonight. We do have an agenda that's pretty aggressive. But about 6:30, we're going to take the e-board out of the room and attempt to reach a recommendation for the body. So let's enjoy tonight, pay attention, and hopefully everything works out well.
Makes that sound ominous.
Tell them not to have too much fun.
Good evening.
Hi.
We're going to go ahead and get this kicked off by giving the candidates each 2 minutes to talk a little bit about themselves and their campaign. So we will go ahead and get started with Senator Jayapal.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pramila Jayapal, and I'm running for the 7th Congressional District. Some of you know my background. I'm an immigrant from India. I was born in India. I came to the United States when I was 16 years old. My parents took all the money they had, which was about $5,000 at the time, and they used it to send me here by myself because they believed that the United States was the place that I would get the best education and have the brightest future. And because I've had that version of the American dream, and I didn't really realize what a sacrifice it was until my son was 16, and I thought about sending him across the ocean, I've devoted the last 25 years of my life to fighting for other people to have that American dream. Some of you also know that I started the organization called Hate Free Zone right after 9/11 to stand up against the Bush administration and civil liberties abuses. And led that organization for 12 years to become One America. We changed our name. We registered 23,000 immigrant citizens to vote. We wrote the Washington Dream Act in our office. We actually wrote the Washington Voting Rights Act with David Perez in our office. And we've organized thousands of immigrants across the state to fight for workers' rights, immigrant rights, and civil rights. Also was on the mayor's $15 minimum wage committee, passed 15 in Seattle, pushed for paid safe and sick days. And I want to go to Congress to be a bold, progressive fighter for the middle class, to pick people up out of poverty, to stand with workers, and to use this platform for organizing so that we build a movement for progressive change in this country and we take on the corporations that have rigged this system against working people. And I am really proud to have all 7 of the labor unions that have endorsed in this race have endorsed me. And that's because I've been on the picket lines with you. I have fought at the negotiating tables with you. I understand what it means to make sure we have democracy in the workplace, collective bargaining rights, and make sure that our unions are strong. I ask for your support and your vote, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Pamela. Next up, we'll go ahead and have Representative Walkinshaw introduce himself. And just for your reference, Nicole is here giving you time cards.
Thank you all very much. My name is Brady Walkinshaw, and I am so excited to be here with you all tonight. So I got into this race back at the beginning of December. And I got into this race because I boldly believed that my generation in this country is going to be the first generation that is going to be worse off than our parents. We're the first generation in this country where we will face lower wages, where we'll face less retirement security, where we'll face a climate that no longer sustains what our generation will need for an economy that works for all of us. This past year, I stood up with United Farm Workers and the State Labor Council to fight for the rights of farm workers when I introduced legislation that responded to the really tragic death of Mr. Vasquez, who was a dairy worker in eastern Washington who died in a manure pit when his front loader slipped into that unmarked manure pit. I introduced legislation, took on the farm lobby, and we moved forward a very important bill that has fought dairy gold and moved forward the fight for workers in farm worker safety. This is a personal issue for me because while I always had opportunity growing up, I worked in fields picking berries. I have the pay stubs that I remember from growing up in rural Whatcom County of 80-hour weeks where I didn't have to work those jobs because my mother was a public school teacher for over 30 years. My father, who farmed vegetables and also worked in agricultural education, provided for me, but alongside so many of my friends in rural Whatcom County where I grew up, I worked those jobs, so I know what it is to work in a field, to pick berries, to drive a Ford F-350 flatbed truck and take the berries to the processing plant. I know what that is. And that's an experience that has fired me to create change in my career serving the public. That's what I will bring to you. I will bring a dedication to the labor movement to say, what underscores the labor movement is the idea of solidarity, that it's not about just one of us, it's about all of us.
Thank you, Brady.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Council Chair McDermott.
Thank you very much for moderating. Thank you very much to Working Washington and the King County Labor Council for sponsoring the first forum where all three of us get to take questions from the same audience. I'm looking forward to the evening very much. And you know that this is far more than just talking about electing a member to Congress. This is about progressive policy. Our city, our county, our region has really led the way in some groundbreaking work in the $15 an hour minimum wage, in paid sick leave, now taking that work statewide with the ballot initiative. But it is so much more than that. We have so much opportunity, not just in our region, but also nationally, to deliver on the same kind of progressive results. There's a pent-up demand. We're on the verge of actually achieving that kind of progressive success nationally. We need a leader who can do that. My 15 years of experience, 10 in the Washington State Legislature, serving in the House and the Senate, was devoted to working family issues. And for the last 5 years, I've served on the King County Council as budget chair for the last 4, and currently as chair of the council, again, delivering for working families and labor's values. I've been a member of AFT Washington myself, having taught at South Seattle Community College when I was in the legislature. My husband, Michael, is a teacher, tenured instructor at Bellevue College, a member of the Washington Education Association. And I'm proud to have earned the endorsement of King County Executive Dow Constantine and the Senate Democratic leader Sharon Nelson. Again, because they know of work I have done to champion working families, the right to organize, the right to bargain collectively, and to address the income inequality that is plaguing our nation and keeping the middle class from having a real voice. I'm the son of teachers, and I'm running for Congress because I believe everyone should have equal opportunity in our country. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're out of time.
So we're really excited here. We're actually live streaming this as well. So we have hundreds of people watching online. Excited to hear what you guys have to say about labor issues. But first, we actually wanted to give a chance to the candidates to pose questions to their opponents. We have them in, and they'll be anonymous. And I will reiterate, because some of them are a little bit feisty, that we did not create these questions. Councilmember McDermott, how will your candidacy excite our next generation about the labor movement? You have 90 seconds.
Again, my work throughout my 10 years in the legislature earned me a 95% voting record with the Washington State Labor Council. And we need to address, and I will champion on the federal level, making college affordable, being able to refinance student loans, and addressing community colleges by working to have free community colleges for citizens across our country. We need that economic opportunity. We need people to have those vocational opportunities. But also, we need to defend and expand the right to organize. That's really where the rubber hits the road, where we need to do that hard work. And that comes from building relationships with student groups, with traditionally underrepresented groups, gay and lesbian organizations, women, people of color, reaching out to communities across the district and frankly across the state to build the strongest labor movement we can, because it's truly the labor movement that is the last stop between the income inequality and the 1% gathering every single dollar in this economy.
Representative Walkinshaw, everyone is for raising the minimum wage. What specifically have you done to help raise the minimum wage and pass sick and safe days?
Thank you. So the minimum wage in this country needs to rise, and we all know that. And I think every single one of you has fought to make that happen in this city. So thank you for your leadership. For me, what I've done is earlier in my life, when I was working in agriculture, my experience was thinking about a farm system that has been excluded under the National Labor Relations Act, has systematically excluded the rights of farm workers from fair wages in this country. And that was a crime. I believe that was an exclusion that happened in the 1960s when we passed that National Labor Relations Act. And systematically, since then, we've continued to exclude farm workers time and again from the necessary protections that we need under the Fair Wages Acts and the National Labor Relations Acts. So what I've done on these issues is my support, particularly this last year, to farm workers is about supporting building that movement so that when I go to Congress, a priority for me will be to stand up for the rights of farm workers who've been systematically excluded. 5 of 8 low-income jobs in this country, 5 of 8 low-wage jobs in this country are in our country's food systems, whether that's people in the field or people at the tills, the registers, and our grocers. So what I will do is continue to support across our food system to push for these rights, to push for the rights of farm workers and everyone in our food system on wages and paid sick leave.
Thank you. Senator Jayapal, you often say you're an organizer and demonstrated a lifetime of working class values, yet you chose to start your professional career as a Wall Street investment banker in one of the biggest national investment banks, Payne Weber, at the time. How does that deliberate choice match what you've been saying in your new public career seeking elected office? Once again, we did not ask these questions.
No, it's great. I love that question, actually. So my dad, when he sent me here, wanted me to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a business person, because that is what Indian fathers want, if there's any other Indians out here. And my sophomore year of college, I used we only had money for one phone call home a year, so I used my phone call home to call my dad from the hall phone and say that I wanted to be an English literature major instead of being an economics major. And then I held the phone away from my ear like this as he screamed at me and said, "I didn't send you to the United States to learn how to speak English. You already know how to speak English." And so I promised him that I would get the same job because he wanted financial security for me, and that job at the time was the mid-'80s, and investment banking was really hot, and if you were smart, you went to work on the investment bank side, and I worked in leverage buyouts. Mike Milken was king. The fact that somebody like me that was 20 years old could go and work on Wall Street tells you why we're in the mess we're in now. And I tell young people that I mentored, it was a great experience for me because it really taught me what I did not want to do, and it drove me to working for social justice for the next 25 years. So it was a pretty damn good experience.
Thank you. We're now going to move into the next portion of the event, which is going to be questions from workers. We have 5 workers, who are going to come up to the microphone over here to go ahead and ask you directly questions regarding 5 different issue areas. So the first question that we're going to start with comes from Connie Rodriguez. She's a member of the Laborers. Connie is a Panamanian immigrant worker and immigrated to this country as a teenager to pursue her studies, was naturalized in 1989, and has been with the Laborers for over 11 years. Go ahead.
My question is, what would you do differently in order to assure that Congress passes a comprehensive immigration reform and we get all the support that we have lacked on previous attempts?
We'll go ahead and start with Representative Walkinshaw.
Thanks very much. So my grandparents and my mother immigrated to this country from Cuba when she was a child, and she came here in a very different immigration environment than we're in now. And what I believe we need to do is to make a pathway to citizenship for the 11 to 12 million undocumented Americans in this country, and make that so that it actually happens in the next Congress through work that has already been introduced. We've seen bipartisan packages on comprehensive immigration reform that have moved through the Senate. And we need to push on those so that we were able to make that agreement together and pass that through Congress. A couple comments on comprehensive immigration reform. First of all, when we take this on, we need to make sure that we don't exclude categories. We need to make sure that it works for everyone. The second is that we also need to think comprehensively about the H-1B visa program. We have a lot of people who are employed in the H-1B visa program in Washington State. We need to make sure their rights are protected at the same time as we're protecting the rights of workers in this country, because they're interlinked. And we've seen that happen time and again.
Thank you, Representative Walkinshaw. Next up, we'll hear from Senator Jayapal. Same question. And you have a minute to answer.
Thank you, Connie, for the question, and thank you to Leuna for all your work on comprehensive immigration reform. I started my work on the issue back in 2003. I co-chaired the Immigrant Workers Freedom Ride with the King County Labor Council. We took a bus of 45 people across the country for 12 days, speaking 24 different languages, and it was a real honor to start my work really in that way. We have built the movement over the years to the point where now the American public believes, 75% of the American public believes that we need comprehensive immigration reform with a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, with family reunification, with civil rights and civil liberties, and with worker protections for everybody. I helped draft the bill that passed the U.S. Senate in a bipartisan vote for comprehensive immigration reform, but John Boehner, this is the time to boo, would not bring it to the floor for a vote, and I can tell you there's nobody that knows the politics and the policy of immigration reform better than me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Connie. My great-grandfather immigrated from Ireland, and when he came to North America, it wasn't uncommon to find signs in windows, no, Irish need not apply. We're a nation made up of generations of immigrants, and we need to remember that we've had a sad history of making the other out of the most recent people to arrive and opposing their citizenship, their participation in our country. and we need to change that. The DREAM Act and educational opportunities are good intermediate steps, but indeed we do need comprehensive immigration reform with a path to citizenship. And how do we do that differently than what we've done before? Well, we need to remember that the issue comes from all directions. Many people care about this issue, and so we need to think about not only looking at it from our own perspective, but also that of business, and work across the aisle, combine everybody into one comprehensive package, and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Martina Phelps and her sister Taylor, who are members of Working Washington, our partner for this event this evening. Can we go ahead and just give a warm welcome to all our brothers and sisters here from Working Washington?
Income inequality is a major issue of our time for everyone. As we battle income inequality, even when we have major victories, such as raising the minimum wage, it is important to remember the already existing additional gap faced by women and people of color. How would you ensure women and people of color will not continue to remain disproportionately affected by poverty?
Thank you. We'll start with Senator Jayapal.
Thank you for the question. The reality is that on almost every issue, we have disproportionate burdens on women and people of color. And if you look at minimum wage workers, 2/3 of all workers are women, and minimum wage workers are women and people of color. By the way, if you look at immigration, 2/3 of all immigrants to the United States are women, which a lot of people don't know. But what we have to do is think about equity in these issues, not just equality. So how do we get people to the same starting line to start with? And one example of just a way in which I did that on transportation is making sure that we put $5.25 million into transportation pre-apprenticeship programs specifically for women and people of color, because you cannot get everybody to the same place unless you give some people additional support. And I'm going to continue to make sure that we're bringing racial equity and gender equity into everything that we fight for.
Thank you. Councilmember McDermott, you're up next.
Thank you very much. From the minimum wage, as you phrased the question, to income inequality in its general sense, we need to raise up the minimum wage. We've successfully done that in SeaTac with early support that truly benefited the workers in SeaTac, and particularly at the airport. Many people of color, immigrants and women, made up in that population in those communities. I was proud to be an early endorser of that campaign. And then we brought that campaign to Seattle. We need to take that work nationally, but we need to make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind. And we need to look at apprenticeship utilization. We don't meet the targets in too many cases. And so some would actually have a conversation about reducing the targets. I say no, we need to actually redouble the efforts and make sure that we're reaching everyone and meeting our original targets.
So something I don't think we've talked about enough is one of the costs that has gone up more for working families than any other in the last 20 years, and that's the cost of childcare. Childcare has risen by a factor of 8 for many working families over the last 15, 20 years. And if we're going to address poverty, if we're going to address gender inequity, if we're going to talk about disproportionality affecting different communities of color, I think we need to be really bold on childcare. In Vancouver, in British Columbia last year, the Left Party ran a campaign saying no one should pay more than $15 a day for the cost of childcare. We need to be bold in this country when we look at childcare costs, and that's something I'm going to champion as we talk about this discussion and this debate. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next question is on criminal justice reform, and it comes from our brother Sean Begsby, who's the president of the Electricians Union, IBEW 46.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for that great introduction, and thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. IBEW Local 46 has been fighting for the rights of formerly incarcerated workers, the majority of which are women and people of color. If you were in Congress, what would you do to make criminal justice reform a reality and actually stop the school-to-prison pipeline for especially Black and Latino workers?
Councilmember McDermott.
Thank you very much. We need to address people coming out of prison. We need to address the racial inequality within our criminal justice system, or our so-called justice system. However, it's tying that to the ending the school-to-prison pipeline. We actually need to end the school-to-prison pipeline so people don't end up in prison in the first place. We need to eliminate the achievement gap so people don't drop out of school and don't end up in prison in the first place. And we need to ban the box so that when you're out of prison, you can apply for a job and not be stopped immediately from advancing in an employment situation. We need to also, on the federal level, end for-profit prisons. And again, we need to invest in our communities and make sure that we're doubling our investment in Head Start, so we're reaching everybody early.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Representative Walkinshaw.
Thanks for the question. This is an area that I've led in Olympia. This year we passed one of the most important criminal justice bills that we've passed in several years, called the Certificate of Restoration of Opportunity. That's a bill I sponsored, that's a bill I've introduced the last 3 years, and that's a bill that we passed into law this year. That bill makes it so 70 professions in this state that had been previously closed to people who'd been incarcerated are now going to be open through a process called a Certificate of Restoration. Jobs like longshoremen, nursing assistants, bartenders, hairstylists, jobs that were previously closed to people with a felony conviction in their past are now going to be open in this state. That's the kind of leadership I bring, is getting things done. The next piece of legislation I passed this year on this was the only bill to pass in Olympia this year that expanded reproductive rights for women. And that was a bill, let's give it up for that. We need to fight for that. This was a bill that if you'd been incarcerated for 30 days, your Medicaid was terminated. We followed the lead of 10 other states in this country, and we changed that to a suspension so that every year when 7,000 people come out of prison in our state, they don't have to wait a year to get access to health care. They don't have to wait to get re-enrolled.
Thank you, Representative Walkinshaw.
They're immediately reinstated on Medicaid. So thank you.
So guess who is the biggest builder of private prisons in this country? Halliburton, you heard it, Dick Cheney. And the way that they build those prisons is they actually look at third-grade test scores. So that is the way they determine where to build prisons. So the idea of how we take on, we've been fighting the prison industrial complex for the last 10 years because those prisons are now also being used for detention. So we got to end the private prison industrial complex. We've got to make sure that we're allowing people to actually come out of, we got to stop people from going into prison, which I think things like legalizing marijuana was really, really important to that. And then once they're in there, we have to make sure that if they're coming out, they actually have the opportunity to get back on their feet. And the LFO issue, the legal financial obligations that people take on when they go into prison and they're getting charged 12.5% on whatever they go in with, it's impossible for them to come out and get out of that cycle of debt. So I've been working with Blackout Washington and others in the Senate to try to get that LFO bill passed, and I look forward to doing that in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you all for your responses.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Jason Chan, a member of Machinists Local 751. He's going to be asking a question regarding the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Thank you for taking the time to come down to this forum. In this room, I probably would be preaching to the choir if I spoke about how destructive free trade agreements like NAFTA and CAFTA are and were and still are to American labor. All three of you have been opposed to TPP on record previously, and thank you for that. But if elected to Congress, what would you do to continue to fight against TPP? Thank you.
We'll go ahead and start with Representative Walkinshaw.
Thanks for the question. And I was really proud to have the endorsement of the Machinists Council in this race. So thank you for that. Thank you for that support. Two things. One is one thing I did over the last 2 weeks with some of you in this room is we circulated a letter and got the majority of the House Democratic caucus with a letter that I supported to send a letter to Congress to oppose the TPP. So we got that done working with SPIA and others here in this room, and we got to show that solidarity from the state federally. The second thing that I will do, and this is a very close to home issue for me. I spent a lot of time living and working in Central America, and I've seen the negative effects of agreements like CAFTA on the living conditions of people living and working in poor urban conditions in developing countries, and the effect that has on negative migration patterns of kids to the United States that end up going to school in places like Nooksack Valley, where I went to school, in my mom's classroom, who's been an ELL teacher for her lifetime. So our trade decisions in this country are connected to international policy and what happens here at home. So thank you.
Thanks for the question. And just so it's clear, we both got endorsements from the Machinists, and we both wrote those letters to Congress and organized our caucuses. Here's the thing. The TPP is negotiated in secret. There is no labor representative that sits on that committee. And if we want to have a real trade agreement, then we should be putting labor onto that committee that actually makes the decisions about what's in the TPP. It is ridiculous that corporations know what's happening in the TPP, but members of Congress don't, workers don't, and labor unions don't. So that's the first thing I would do, is fight for that person or set of people to be on that committee. So we actually have a part in that say. The second thing is we have to organize people to understand that we are, of course, a global society. We understand that there is trade, that there is movement of people and goods. We're not isolationist towards the rest of the world, but we want to make sure that workers get a fair shake. Thank you.
Thank you.
When we lose Boeing jobs to South Carolina, it's not because they build a better airplane. It's because they pay their workers less. In fact, I'm friends with the former executive director of the Democratic Party in South Carolina, and he calls me up and apologizes when that happens because he knows they're paying their workers less. It's not because they build a better airplane. We end up in a race to the bottom within our own region, within regions within our country, and that's what's happening with trade partnerships like the TPP, is a race to the bottom in the hard-fought labor standards of collective bargaining, in wages and benefits and job protections internationally to a much lower bottom. Same thing happens in environmental policy. This is where we need to work in coalition. That's why I've introduced a resolution in the King County Council, one of my first acts as chair, to call on the delegation to oppose the TPP. And we'll continue that work as a member of Congress to build coalitions like the Fair Trade Washington Coalition, very much in favor of trade, but wanting fair trade that benefits our workers and our environment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last question in this segment comes from Dawn Gearhart, who's here on behalf of Teamsters Local 117. They're Uber driver members, and she's got a question regarding worker power and organizing.
As you all know, employers and businesses in recent years have increasingly used the independent contractor classification as a way to erode benefits, workers' rights, and basic provisions for workers. And we want to know, when you're in Congress, how will you use that position to expand the rights of workers in the new gig economy, including independent contractors, rather than take steps back? Great question, and the first thing I'd say is let's follow the Seattle model. Let's
let's actually make sure that we're allowing those folks to organize. And there is no reason we can't do that. That means we've got to change federal law. We've got to make sure that independent contractors and that next generation of jobs, this is a way out for people, right? To say that somebody's an independent contractor. But what are they actually doing? And do they have the ability to have workplace democracy? That means we got to let them organize. And so I just want to give it up for Teamsters and all the work that's been done on making sure that those drivers, Uber and Lyft and all of those folks, have to deal with that. You know, fundamentally, the independent contractor model is a model to drive wages, benefits, and rights to the bottom. And we're going to have to organize to fight against that. And I think I've got everybody in this room ready to do that, right? So I think that's where we have to go. And strengthen the NLRB, since I've got more time and Nicole hasn't held it up. Let's strengthen the National Labor Relations Act so that we can actually address that problem too. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Chair McDermott.
Thank you very much, Don. And it's been a pleasure to join with the Teamsters to support the drivers in forming their association and moving forward and trying to have a common voice. Indeed, the misclassification, that's the nice way to put it, the misclassification of employees as independent contractors is costing our federal government millions of dollars that could be better spent in showing up Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and providing the services that we need in this country. How do we go about doing that? Well, we need somebody who's had experience in doing that. As a member of the legislature, I supported home health care workers who were classified as independent contractors, having the right to bargain collectively with the state, supported the contract for child care workers as well. And on the federal level, we need to stop the misclassification and sponsor legislation such as we've seen the Teamsters support here in Seattle to allow drivers to organize.
Thank you. Representative Walkinshaw.
So a few months ago, some of you may have followed this, but the employer WeWork, which is a $10 billion company, operates shared office space around the country, laid off all of its custodial and janitorial staff overnight in its New York and Boston locations. Their SEIU 32BJ, which is the largest custodial union in the country, which represents about 160,000 workers in New York, fought that. And we've had our office here. We had our office initially here in WeWork, and we wrote a letter in protest to the board of WeWork, protesting that move of laying off those workers. We worked with 32BJ, and also, if there's anyone here from SEIU Local 6, reached out to SEIU Local 6 and worked on trying to support workers in New York who had been laid off overnight. There was a negotiated agreement there that actually rehired those staff, and we were very excited to have played a very, very small role in supporting those workers in Boston, New York, who were laid off in those jobs. We're going to be seeing more of that. And while I agree with what's been said here, I think we have to think bigger. I think we have to, I'll think bigger in Congress, so thank you for that.
All right, thank you for those questions. We actually received hundreds of additional questions from folks in the audience and online, so we're gonna move something we'd like to call the lightning round, which means you're probably gonna wanna take those mics out, because you're gonna have like 2 seconds to answer these questions. So the lightning round is in three sections. Yeah. The lightning round's in 3 sections. The first section, you can only answer with a yes or a no. All right, you ready? Question 1, are you feeling the burn?
Yes. That was a yes.
Just go straight down the line.
I'm feeling a Democratic candidate for president in 2016.
That is not a yes or no answer. We need a yes or no. You could take a waffle. Are you waffling?
I'm waffling.
No for the candidate, yes for the issues.
Our next question, have you ever crossed a picket line?
Never.
Never.
Not on your life.
Have you ever worked for minimum wage?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, the next one. Is Donald Trump a fascist?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. He should be fired.
Are you a feminist?
Absolutely.
It's 2016, yes.
Yes, one of my mother's proudest accomplishments.
Are you an LGBTQ leader or ally?
You bet.
Yes or no? It's a yes or no. That was a yes or no question, appropriately answered.
I have been the G for 31 years, and I am an activist for LGBT issues.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to remind folks, yes or no. Do Black Lives Matter?
Yes.
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 So fantastic. So I'm glad you guys answered yes to that, because we have a bonus round here. We're going to actually ask you to take out your phones, take a selfie with these Black Lives Matter signs, and post them on your social media accounts. Or you can have your campaign managers do it.
Post it on my page,
Thank you very much. Next question we have here. Can we stop charter schools?
Yes. I think the Supreme Court's going to rule them unconstitutional.
Yep, I voted against them just on the House floor a few days ago.
Yes. Have killed charter school bills in Olympia and will kill it in the courts as well.
Sonics Arena in Soto, yes or no?
No.
No.
Yes.
Thank you. Would you take money from the Chamber of Commerce?
No. But I don't think they're going to want to give it to me either.
No, I've already committed from day one in this race that I wouldn't be accepting corporate PAC contributions, and I'm going to stick to that through this race.
No.
Do you support single-payer health care?
Yes.
Yeah, enthusiastically.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Next question. Have you ever voted for a Republican?
Never.
No.
I've dated Republican. I'll never make that mistake again. And I once voted for Ralph Monroe, and I'll never make that mistake again either.
I just want to give a shout out to people in the audience. These are great questions. Have you ever been ridiculed in The Stand, which, if you don't know, is the Washington State Labor Council publication for all things labor? Have you ever been ridiculed in The Stand?
I've been published in The Stand. My articles never ridiculed.
Our farm labor bill was featured in The Stand a couple months ago, but I've never been ridiculed in it.
No.
Next question. Are you opposed to fracking?
Yes.
That was a yes.
Yes.
This question comes in from an online viewer. Would you champion GMO labeling?
Yes.
I support labeling.
Yes.
The next question is also a question we received in an online submission just a minute ago. Is climate change a labor issue?
Absolutely. The environment is everybody's issue.
It's a labor issue, and I think it's a labor opportunity as we move to a low-carbon economy.
Yes, and we must resist the action to make it a wedge issue, dividing us.
Final question, also from an online viewer. Should Citizens United be overturned?
Absolutely. Yesterday.
We're on our way with the new Supreme Court nominee that I hope the Senate confirms, so absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're now moving into the second portion of our lightning round edition. I want to reiterate, this is still a one-word answer section. First question, no longer yes or no, now one word. Who needs a union now?
Everyone.
Everybody.
All.
All right, that was to get you warmed up. Tell us one issue you flip-flopped on. One word. It is a good one. Good work. Or someone take a picture of everyone's faces right now.
Really? Nothing?
I already confessed.
Okay, it looks like we have officially stumped the candidates. Hey!
Whether my son should get to take the car or not? No.
All right, that's okay. We'll move to the next question. What's your favorite major city that's not Seattle?
Mumbai.
Washington, D.C.
Oh. Dublin.
How long does it take for you to get to work?
Can I hyphenate? Yeah. Far too long.
It depends if we're in special session. No, about an hour to Olympia.
Same hour.
How much is childcare in King County?
It's $17,000 a year, which actually I think is about 50% of the median income here in King County.
Talked about it earlier, way too high.
Too high for parents, too low for providers.
I want to know who this question came from. How many laborers does it take to screw in a light bulb?
Okay, I'm ready. I'm looking at Dale. Dale. 7. 1 to screw in the light bulb, and 6 to argue about whose jurisdiction it is.
I'm just going to say 1.
Good answer.
Which local?
Thank you. The next question, what grocery store do you shop at?
PCC.
The Union QFC across the street from our house.
West Seattle Thriftway.
Uber or yellow cab? Uber or yellow cab?
Yellow.
Yellow and occasionally Lyft.
Yellow.
What gender pronoun do you prefer?
She, her.
His, him.
He, him.
Final question for this round. What is the top issue, one word, facing our country?
I'm sorry?
What is the top issue facing our country? One word. Yeah.
Inequality.
Race.
Broken campaign finance system.
Thank you. We are going to have to skip the last section of the lightning round and move right into our final section. But before we do that, I want to acknowledge our partners for the evening, Working Washington. Working Washington, thank you. My sister up here, who's to my left, Sejal, is the executive director for this powerhouse organization, and I just want to say a few words. Working Washington is a workers' organization that helps workers access their rights and advocate for policy changes. They led the way on the $15 initiative in both SeaTac and Seattle, and they're now working on a secure scheduling initiative here in the city of Seattle, so thank you.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you to the King County Labor Council for having us as a partner here today. We hope that we were funny enough for you guys to want to partner with them. All right, so enough with questions. We just heard from the candidates how they've put their bodies on the line, their votes on the line. Now we want them to put their voices on the line to support labor. We asked each candidate to come up with an original chant and lead us on it. You guys ready to chant? All right, so each candidate's gonna have 2 minutes to get us riled up. And where should we start? We're gonna start with Senator Jayapal.
Here it comes.
Are you guys ready? All right, let's see you stand up. Stand up. All right, here we go. I'm going to say a voice for workers. You're going to say progressive and bold. Whatever I say, you say progressive and bold. You ready? All right. A voice for workers. Progressive and bold. 15 an hour. Progressive and bold. Paid safe and sick days. Progressive and bold. Building a movement. Progressive and bold. We can do this. We can do this. Sí se puede.
That was excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Sister Jayapal. We'll go ahead and go with you, Representative Walkinshaw.
So this is one you're all gonna know. Please stand back up again. So I'm gonna say something you're gonna know, and then you're gonna respond with something I think you know. Stand up, fight back. When workers' rights are under attack, what do we do? When women's rights are under attack, what do we do? When trans rights are under attack, what do we do? When immigrant rights are under attack, what do we do? When union rights are under attack, what do we do? When teachers' rights are under attack, what do we do? When our country is under attack from Donald Trump, what do we do? And what are we going to do tomorrow when we go out to the election and we vote in our caucuses? What are we going to say? Thank you.
All right, a couple years ago, I've stood with you all for my 15-year career, and for the last couple years, we've been boycotting a particular set of hotels. I was proud to join with Unite Here Local 8 when they proclaimed the boycott, so this comes from that work. When I say, don't check in, you say check out. Don't check in. 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 Check out.
like to thank the candidates for participating. I'd like to thank Katie and Sajel for the great work they did. Now we're going to ask the E-Board to retire to Hall 6, and we'll conduct some business. And everyone else, we're going to ask that if you're not a delegate, that you leave the hall. And we'll reconvene in probably 15 minutes. And the bar's open. And please sign in out there on the volunteer sheets. That's something that we really need. We need everyone to be involved and be engaged. So on your way out, there's some volunteer sheets out there to sign in. And if you haven't signed in as a delegate, check the sheet out front. Thank you. Be back in 15.
Thank you.